Good morning. If you guys are anything like me, then you find yourself at the supermarket, you're buying your groceries, and you go to ring it up, and then they say, we don't offer bags anymore. Because I happen to live in Los Angeles County, and as of this year, they made it a new law that they don't allow disposable bags anymore. And so you have to bring your own reusable bags if you want to be efficient with grabbing everything out. And the Clearwater advocates actually said it would reduce the amount of trash in nature, such as landfills, waterways, oceans, rivers, and just on the streets in general. Because we've all definitely seen plastic bags at the beach, right? But I personally hate it because I always forget my reusable bags, and so I'm forced to take the whole shopping cart out with me and then take it back, and it just makes everything really inefficient. And I wanted to find out why the usage of disposable bags was banned and if it was really that ecologically friendly. And because their main concern was they didn't want to have plastic bags in circulation anymore because it's so much worse than paper bags. So originally they wanted to just have paper bags offered at stores, and they took that out too. So now there's just no disposable bags. But I wanted to find out why they thought paper bags were more ecologically friendly than plastic bags, because I felt like plastic bags were a little more ecologically friendly than paper bags. And I found out I was looking in my favor. And I found out that my entire concerns that were happening in Los Angeles County were actually happening on a large scale right now over in Canada. And after looking at the conflict in Canada, how paper bags were made, how plastic bags are made, and even looking into biodegradable bags a bit, I learned that the usage of plastic bags over paper bags is actually more eco-friendly than paper bags over plastic bags. Hopefully you guys will feel the same way at the end of this. CTV News in Canada says that since about June of this year, Canada's council has been talking about the 5-cent tax people had to pay. And maybe you guys, we used to have it here, I don't know about Orange County, but in Los Angeles County we used to have it where if you wanted to take a disposable bag, you had to pay a nickel. And then the people in Canada, the council thought that that was too inefficient, and so they just wanted to take out plastic bags altogether and just have paper bags. And so they actually voted 24-20 about eliminating the bags over the tax. And so that was supposed to be put in effect January 1st of 2013. But the Toronto Taxpayer Coalition says that they didn't want this, and it is putting the city on shaky legal ground, saying the usage of plastic bags is actually more eco-friendly than paper bags. Why? Because one, it would abolish many jobs and local businesses to the environment, such as environmentalists, manufacturers, recyclers, retailers, and business groups. That's what the councillor and the Taxpayer Coalition were concerned with. It would also destroy Canada's forest with all the extra paper bags. They said it would mean using the equivalent of Toronto's tree canopy in the next 10 years. So over the next years with all the paper bags, it would almost wipe out most of Toronto's forests. Kevin Goddett of the City Council says, "The plastic bag ban is bad for Toronto. It makes no sense environmentally or operationally for the city. It will destroy local high-tech green jobs." And I was actually doing this research last week, and I actually found out that yesterday they repealed it to a vote of 38-7. There are definitely multiple arguments to both paper and plastic bags, so I went into the details of both of them, and turns out there's a lot more than meets the eye. Let's start out with paper bags. Paper, as we all know, comes from trees. Lots and lots and lots of trees. The logging industry is huge, and the process to get the paper bag is huge, and it takes a really heavy toll on the planet. The process starts with clear cutting, resulting in massive habitat destruction and long-term ecological damage. Mega machinery comes in to remove the logs, whether by land or sky, such as like trucks or helicopters, and that involves a lot of fossil fuel, just to fuel the means of getting the logs out of there. And logging a small area can have a huge effect on an ecological chain. The trees that have to dry for 3 years, I didn't know if you guys know that, the trees have to dry for 3 years before they can actually be turned into paper. Then more machinery is used to rip the bark into 1-inch squares and cooked under tremendous heat and pressure, then digested with the chemical mixture of limestone and acid. Pulp is then washed and bleached, and both stages require thousands of gallons of clean water, which uses 400 parts water to 1 part pulp, dehydrated, and then rolled out to make paper. And so I didn't know if you guys know that that's that's the entire process that we use to make paper every day, such as the paper we use in class, the toilet paper in the bathroom, those little flyers you get on your car all day. All that paper comes from that entire process to make paper. And imagine the impact on the economy and the surrounding areas with the plastic bags taken out of circulation, and it's just paper bags. People say that paper is better than plastic in a recycling setting, and the truth about it is that bags were made from a non-renewable resource are actually rarely recycled. 1 to 3% of plastic bags that you all put in your recyclers are actually recycled, and 10 to 15% of paper bags that we say we're recycling are actually getting recycled. So paper wins it in that sense, but the fact about it is that we're just not recycling. But how are plastic bags made? I want you guys to bear with me, it's going to be really scientific for the next minute or so. Plastic is a development of the ingredient known as polyethylene, which is basically made out of the ingredients petroleum and natural gas, and separated and converted into different types of polymers. Polymers are repeating units which are repeated several ways to make ethylene. Ethylene then forms molecular change, which are called polyethylene. I bet you didn't know plastic was that scientific, but it takes all that to just make the plastic that we see every day. Plastic bags are made from 3 types of plastics: high-density polyethylene, low-density polyethylene, or linear low-density polyethylene. This is all part of the method we know and love called vinyl polymerization. Unfortunately, when ethylene and polyethylene are created, carcinogens are released into the air, which we all know that they've had studies recently that say carcinogens are what's causing cancer. And so that's why people don't like making plastic. And although the science behind plastic bags has made our lives easier, it comes at a price because plastic bags simply don't break down and are commonly found in our oceans and rivers. And many have yet to be given out around the world. The process in making the plastic bags is not the problem. That's actually ecologically more efficient than paper production. The problem is that not enough people are recycling, and so that's how it ends up in our oceans and rivers and stuff. And that leads us to the final option of bags out there, which very few are actively using, and that is actually biodegradable bags, or bags that get turned into compost. And I'm sure you guys know the company Sun Chips. And they started a movement in 2010 where they took an eco-friendly step and they started making all their bags of chips in compostable packaging. So they're actually biodegradable bags. The bag is made from a renewable plant-based material, PLA, and you'll be able to compost it in a year in your own home compost pile after you eat the chips, of course. And composting is become more and more popular in the US. And the promise of a fully compostable bag it's awesome because that's like perfect, because then it gets turned into mulch and stuff that's good for the plants and everything. The bags are actually made from a unique polymer known as polyacetic acid, which is in essence lactic acid. That's like when you work out, lactic acid builds up inside your muscles and stuff like that. And it's composed of dextrose and fermentation. Long story short, because it's made with plants that grow annually instead of petroleum, like plastic, which takes millions of years to form, I don't know if you guys know that, that's like a completely different day, the impact on greenhouse gases is much lower. When it comes down to it, why didn't Canada pass the paper bag law? Because people saw the impact it would have on the forest, and from an ecological standpoint, the plastic bags just seem like a better answer. Because yes, it releases carcinogens in the air, but it just won't hurt the earth as much as the deforesting would with all the paper bags in circulation. Los Angeles actually did pass this plastic bag law, however, effects on the earth have not been seen yet. People are expected to bring their own bags to the markets, and if you're like me, you forget, but if they're anything, it's clear that biodegradable bags would be the best answer, but since that's not a worldwide option as of yet, I hope I've made it clear that plastic bags would be a better option than paper bags, granted you all recycle. Thank you.
So Eddie, did you hear the speech?
Yeah, I was outside.
Ah, that happens sometimes. Well, Let me just jump in. Well, you know what? Maybe we can trade. Who is there? Somebody else who was Scott? You were supposed to do another speech later on. Maybe you can take Eddie's place here, and Eddie can take your place later.
Okay.
All right.
I thought it was very informative, as in, you made a very good point saying, we have a kind of an issue here, and going into it and telling all the steps required, so there was really no kind of question about, what does this do, what's the impact? Everything was right there in front of us, and it was actually really kind of cool how, when you were talking about it, you said, well, this just happened yesterday, kind of bringing in, this is happening now. One thing is, you kind of were very reliant on your papers. You were always kind of looking at them. And there were parts where you would seem to get a little extra nervous and speak a little faster and then kind of mumble. So just say, speak up and don't be so reliant on your papers.
All right. I like the story at the beginning. Maybe it could be a little bit smoother, but it worked pretty well. And there's a lot of setup. It does take you almost 2 minutes to finally get to the point where you're saying, here's the point of view that I have on this. So I thought maybe you could get to it a little bit quicker. Once you got to the argument that you're making, there's a lot of time that's spent talking about the processes, and we don't want to turn it into an informative speech. I thought you did a pretty good job keeping it relatively focused on what the harmful consequences of the paper making process were. For instance, oh, I'm sure glad that went off while somebody was not speaking. Stupid thing. Silent. So I thought that it worked pretty well, like I said, although sometimes it did feel a little bit like we're hearing an informative speech on paper bags and plastic bags. But I thought that you did a good job, especially in the last section, talking about biodegradable bags and why they work. This is basically a claim of fact argument that says these bags are better for the environment than the other bags are, and the reason is that the other bags are really, environmentally harmful in the process that goes on, and these are less environmentally harmful. So that meets our criteria. It's a pretty straightforward process there. I thought that was all pretty well explained. I do think that you need to cite your sources a little bit more consistently. I appreciated that you were using recent information, for instance, about the vote in Canada. By the way, I couldn't tell, was that a province? Was that a city? Was it the whole country? I don't know.
Toronto.
Yeah. I think, and you need to specify those kinds of things. And I know you read it in probably online, which the local version of the newspaper or something like that that's been printed online. You need to tell us where you got the information from, and same thing on some of the other things too. I thought the delivery was very solid for your voice. I mean, I thought it was excellent, as a matter of fact. I thought you did a nice job speaking for the most part. The only hesitations and pauses that you had were for the most part natural. Maybe there was one or two tiny little glitches, but I thought you used your voice really well to make the ideas clear and interesting. And your eye contact, though, is inconsistent because you are a little more dependent on the notes than you want to be. I think part of that is because it appears that you have basically just cut your script up into pieces of paper to handle, and that means that you're going to try and rely on reading too much. And if you just had the outline there, and on the pieces on the cards, for instance, you just had the quote or the statistic or the example, you'd be doing that a little bit less. I could tell that you weren't always reading, because there are a lot of times that you do just talk to us, but you have a tendency to treat it as if you're reading. So in other words, even though I didn't think that you were reading, because your voice was not monotone, and it didn't have any of those other negative things, the way you were speaking and the way you were looking with your eye contact made it look like you were reading a lot more than you actually were. And that's, I think, like, it's just, you've got it in your hands, so I'm going to look at it. It's like we talked about before. If it's in front of you, people just have a tendency to say, well, let me keep looking there, even though that's not what you're talking about. So that was a little bit strange. Okay, thank you for getting us started.